So the real red flag is coming up about the dinner. So, but intimacy, even kissing, was off limits. Translator Yulia was always there, and Irina told him she didn't believe in sex before marriage. There is another YouTuber, I think it's Coach Greg Adams, and he always says like more red flags than a Chinese Communist Party parade, and that's what we're already at. Greetings from Odessa Mama. It's going to be an unusual podcast because I'm here and I'm going to have to talk about Scam Central Odessa Mama, and at the same time try and promote the city because it is absolutely fantastic weather here. The summer has really kicked off. It is sweltering. I was just outside Odessa for the last few days. It was even hotter. It was almost 35 degrees Celsius. Probably here in the city it must be 31, 32, but it's also very humid, probably going to get a downpour very soon. And in this video, we're going to discuss a massive downpour that one gentleman, one British man got when he came here to Ukraine. Actually, he came here a lot to Ukraine. He invested and he lost $250,000 US in a, we'll call it a marriage scam here in Scam Central Odessa Mama. Lots of guys, reviewers of the channel, have sent it to me by Instagram, email, Facebook. They've even put it as a comment under my videos in the last few days. It's a BBC article about this British guy who got scammed $250,000 US, which included a fake marriage. So what I'm going to do in today's podcast, I'm going to go kind of through an abridged chronological version of events that are in the article. I'm going to link the full article. I'll put a link to it down below in the description to this video so you can go read the whole thing afterwards. I don't want to go through every single line, of obviously that'll take too long and you can go read it yourself. I'll just pick out some important points of chronology and explain to you how you can avoid a situation like this. So let's get into it. Let's start reading through the BBC article. So the article starts off basically outlining who this guy is. They use a pseudonym, they don't tell us his real name, that's fine. It's not really like I want to confront, humiliate the guy anymore. First thing, it starts about obviously giving a little bit of background to him, and then he's in the meantime, post-scam, hired a detective, which is kind of inverted commas and not really, they don't really pretend the article is really a detective. Basically, he says he used illegal methods to try and get the money back. So draw any conclusions you want from that, what he does, what kind of real business this guy is in. So basically, I think the only point I really have to say about the whole detective thing is like you will see as we go into the article that the scammers were not big scammers here. They were not pros. They were not, shall we say, like a big mafia organization, which a lot of the scammers are involved in here. And in fact, the reason why the detective here, in inverted commas, might be useful is because, well, he probably has a little bit more, let me choose my words carefully, but I was going to say firepower, but he may have that. So yeah, basically he can probably get the money back out of them. So if you are scammed, don't necessarily endorse that you go through hiring someone like this, but maybe that is one way to get your money back. I'm just going to read a little bit abridged, as I said, in chronological order. So I described that there's a thriving dating industry here. Well, yeah, we all know that if you're watching this channel regularly. It's multifaceted and ranges from pay-per-mail email services, so that's the PPL sites that we refer to. That's the typical way that guys are scammed. The most amount of money, I would say. Then you got the face-to-face romance tours. Most of that is also, can't statistically say most, but a lot of that is scam industry completely. And the rest of it, I don't think is a very effective way for you to spend your time if you want to meet a Ukrainian woman here and actually have a relationship. Where Western men pay thousands of dollars to meet a series of prospective young Ukrainian wives. I wouldn't say, I don't know why they put in young, everything is relative. Often they're meeting middle-aged, older, elderly Ukrainian wives, in inverted commas, put in the article. So it's a little bit of misdescription. I wouldn't say, I think that it's kind of a stereotype from the 90s. It was definitely more possible then if you were just Western, you came over and you're paying for introductions to probably meet an attractive 20-year-old. If you were 60, we'll say, you're what would now be a boomer and out of shape, whatever, that kind of stereotype. You don't see that nowadays here. I think you might see it in Southeast Asia. So if you are one of those kind of guys, then probably stay away from Ukraine to start with. But But James, as they call him there, says he didn't come to Odessa looking for love. So that's what's actually unusual, because most of the guys who are scammed large amounts of money here, they do come looking for romance, usually looking for marriage. A lot of them, unfortunately, are actually widowers. In my experience, I have helped guys in the past with vetting women. It's always turned out to be a scam, because if they come to me, they suspect something is up. And they all came looking for love. A lot of them were widowers, so the wife had died, and then they were obviously psychologically vulnerable, and they get exploited either by PPL sites, which are letter writing scams, or they come here in person, they also get scammed. But this isn't James's case, which I think makes it even more remarkable. So let's get into it. He's a charity worker living in the UK. He was asked in 2015 to set up a new project supporting children fleeing the conflict zone in Ukraine's east, so that is Donbass, where there is a low-level military conflict. Yeah, he was new to working abroad, just scrolling through it a little bit quicker, but he threw himself in with the help of a translator called Yulia, and for several months he shuttled back and forth, presumably from the UK to Odessa, doing voluntary work. So it sounds like a pretty good guy in that sense. He's giving his time to help children who are affected by the war in the east of the country, helping out Ukraine, and he didn't come here looking for love. So he's not the typical wife hunter, we would say, who gets scammed here. Then that winter, a heavy snowfall brought the work in Odessa to a halt. There wasn't much to do, so Yulia, so remember this is a translator, is actually helping with his real charity work. She suggested James might like to go on a date with one of her friends. Sounds pretty cool, actually. Yulia sounds like she's going to be a good local contact, something you do need here if you move to Odessa in Ukraine. That friend was Irina, and she, then 32 years old, she was from Donetsk, which is in the east city, which is occupied by Russian-backed fighters. It soon became clear that her troubled past went deeper than fleeing the war. So I would say at this point, the real key here, and what makes it remarkable, as I said, even more remarkable, is the fact that he had someone he could trust. He had the translator, which he had a professional relationship with, and she was the one that made this introduction. And you're going to see very quickly why there's a huge number of red flags with this, but that's kind of unusual. It's not unheard of. I have seen it happen here, where people, women I've known, have clearly been up to some dodgy stuff and think that they're obviously not aware of the content of this channel. Otherwise they wouldn't waste their time. But it has happened once or twice. They suggest that I go places and stuff, and I'm just like, or do things or send money. Yeah, so it kind of surprised me. So it can happen that it can be an acquaintance who also happens to be a scammer, right? So you could have some bad luck, like James here seems to have had. Anyways, we go further into the article. There was an age difference of 20 years, but James said they got on a house on fire. I actually find that irrelevant in the article. I don't know why they wanted to put it in, but there's a big age gap. Like where they mentioned the supposed bride's been very young at the beginning of the article. First of all, a 20-year age gap here in Ukraine is not as unusual as it is in the West. James had fun with Irina, but they were never alone. This is where it all starts to sound very dodgy. Irina spoke minimal English. Yes, that is normal. And James spoke no Russian or Ukrainian. So as the case with much of Odessa's dating scene, a translator, in this case Yulia, was always there and getting paid up to $150 US a day. Right, so let me deal with it just before I get into the massive red flag. Yes, they said it's much of Odessa's dating scene. It's not part of the dating scene to have a professional interpreter with you at all. It's part of the scam dating scene. So if you are one of those people who's chosen to go with a matchmaker and they're suggesting that you need an interpreter, this is massive red flag number one, because why we have Google Translate today. I understand 30 years ago that maybe interpreter was reasonable enough, but nowadays you have Google Translate, really. If you're going to be meeting someone that you want to have a long-term relationship with and you need a professional interpreter with you all the time. So first red flag is obviously that it wasn't genuine, that she was introducing as her friend who might be interested in them. She's introducing them, the two of them, to make money. So over the next 6 months, the new couple saw each other whenever James came to Odessa. There were expensive meals and evenings at the Opera House. I'm actually standing right in front of the Opera House because I'm in the Palais Royal garden here in Odessa. I got one of my favorite places to smoke shisha on these balmy summer evenings here in Odessa, and the Opera House right in front of me. Again, it's relative because expensive for someone coming from the UK. probably not going to the Opera House here and having dinner, say, at a relatively expensive restaurant behind me. It's going to be a fraction of doing that in London. It's probably going to be, 20% of the price. I have an Irish buddy who's actually here with me now, and he was describing we went out to dinner yesterday, and he picked up the tab, and he paid 30 euros, so about, 35 US dollars for the three of us, at a pretty good restaurant. Not the most expensive, obviously, in the city, but he was describing he went to something commensurate in Dublin, and he picked up the tab for three people, and it was 300 euros. So, yeah, so it's relative. If you're used to eating out in these restaurants every day and that's the budget you have, then it's not expensive. So the real red flag is coming up about the dinners. So, but intimacy, even kissing, was off limits. Translator Yulia was always there, and Irina told him she didn't believe in sex before marriage. Now, I think it said earlier in the article that she had been married twice to Ukrainian. So slightly odd, and she's in her mid-30s to say that I don't believe in sex before marriage. And no intimacy, no even kissing, because obviously they're being blocked in inverted commas by the translator. She's strategically there to have an excuse, and this, as well as the sex before marriage thing. So basically, this is the second, because we had the translator making money part, but this is like game over. It's obviously a scam, right? Because someone who's interested in you is going to have some sort of intimacy with you before they get married. If they're mid-30s, twice divorced Ukrainian woman. That's just the way it is, but they use this as a very common tactic. Why it's important to point out that they use withholding intimacy to make the guy try harder. He becomes very needy. He even probably throws more money at the situation, really hopefully believing that she will fall for him. Basically, someone who's not even interested in kissing you after you've gone out with them a few times in this culture, not interested in you, interested in your money if you're still paying for them. So anyways, there is another YouTuber, I think it's Coach Greg Adams, and he always says like more red flags than a Chinese Communist Party parade, and that's what we're already at, and it's going to get a lot worse in this video. Wait till you see what happens. So James thought this is a common rationalization of being scammed, because at this stage he should know he's been scammed, that she has a very high moral standards. He's even tried to impute good behavior on her when she's obviously robbing him at this stage, right? Robbing of his time, his emotions, and his money. So I'd say at this point in the article, it takes a twist, because this makes it even more unusual. So he decided, let me go back. Yeah. So he decides to move to Ukraine because she gives him some excuse why basically she can't go to the UK. And he quits his job and sells his house, so he has a big wad of cash. And he comes here and he starts looking for a place to live together. This is a woman he's never even kissed. So, yeah. And buying was expected. That's actually a really good idea to invest in property here in Ukraine. It's become very popular in the last year with my clients. I was even discussing with my Irish buddy just the value for money that you can get here. So that's actually a sensible investment once you do it right, to invest in real estate here. It's amazing value, but not to be with someone you never kissed, and you need to have someone you can trust, really trust, someone who's reliable to help you with that. Yeah, Irina suggested that they make the unusual arrangement to get his 200,000 US dollars for an apartment to Ukraine. That kind of price point here in Odessa will probably buy you not a villa on the Black Sea, but it will buy you a penthouse here in the historic center. It's bloody amazing value. But that's not what he got, as you can probably tell where this video is going on that. Instead of putting the money in Irina's personal account, he was told he should put in the account of a company owned by her friend Christina or whatever. At this stage, we can just call time on this. I mean, obviously he's been scammed. He's been extremely foolish. You need an insider here, basically, when you're transferring the money. It is a bit complicated. When you got a large amount of cash, to bring them into Ukraine and buy things like real estate, and you need to sort out your residency as well if you want to spend time here and not be caught up with a 90-day every 180 visa-free rule. So if you really want to spend time in it because he's planning to move here, and you need to invest in someone who's actually going to help you with that genuinely. I have a program down below in the description on demand, Slavic Utopia Secrets Ukraine, where I have a group of guys who are planning to spend or already spending 3 to 12 months a year here and investing in real estate, and obviously got their residency sorted out. So go look at that if you're interested. Yeah, and then they have to get legally married. I actually going to skip through this because this is basically farcical. Then he has to get married to the friend in order to get the money out, but they're going to get divorced before the wedding. So he later discovers it's only worth 60K, 60,000 US dollars. He sent wired 200,000. But he does actually end up with a property. He's just in a joint venture with this woman, Christina. So he's got about 30,000, I guess, in theory, where he's already lost 170,000 US dollars of his investment. And then they talk about the price of the wedding. It was 20K apparently. Wedding, you can spend any amount of money. I don't think it seemed to be expensive for what they got, what they describe here. But again, at this stage, it's basically a farce. And then he's got his wedding. So, normally on the wedding night, if you believe that there's no sex before marriage, well, obviously once you're married, at this stage, he's actually married to the first woman. So bloody complicated. It's like something out of a film, basically, like a Hollywood comedy of errors, a tragedy. But yeah, so he has kind of the wedding ceremony, and then afterwards he's going to be divorced from the woman he's wired the money to, and he's going to marry the woman he's supposed to marry, which is Irina. This Christina woman, it turns out, was actually married up until a few weeks beforehand to her, obviously a real husband, this guy called Denis. She gets divorced from him, married to our James. Then afterwards she gets divorced from James, at which point he's supposed to marry Irina. But anyways, on this fake wedding night, they basically, apparently he gets very drunk and has to be brought to hospital, so he doesn't actually get to consummate the marriage with Milady. I'm even forgetting, Irina is the bride, right? Because you got Yulia, the scammer translator, and then Christine is the scammer who has the money wired to her company. And then afterwards, this is actually important for you to realize. He says that, okay, he's in hospital, and Irina refused to go and meet him in the hospital. Her husband, right? Because he had humiliated her by getting drunk at the wedding. Yes. So this is a very common scammer tactic here. So what they do is try and flip the script when they behave badly. Like obviously, just the fact that, okay, let's just take a situation where you get ill and you go to hospital. They flip the script and say, yeah, I can't come and see you because we're not married. She apparently says in it, or she's in the hospital actually on something else. Anyways, basically they use psychological warfare on the victim. They make the victim feel like they are the perpetrator of some social crime. And here it's humiliating her for family on the wedding night by getting ill. Obviously, they poisoned the guy, poor guy. I mean, I feel a certain level of compassion towards him, even though he's been an idiot by going along with this. But yeah, remember that these psychological tricks are standard for scammers in Eastern Europe. They will make you feel like you did something wrong when they behave badly. So here, she refuses to go and see him in the hospital, and then refuses to let him come and see her, and actually simps it up another level, demanding that he pay her 12,000 US dollars for some medical costs, which he sends. So, I mean, at this stage, what can you say? Eventually, the madness stopped. Friendly Ukrainian intervened and broke it to James that the real value of his apartment was just 60K and not the 200K he paid. So he basically had a Ukrainian white knight came in and saved him. So he had the good fortune, I guess because he was spending time here, and the local just said, listen, this is too outrageous. Remember, these people are, it said at the beginning of the article, because they have issues with the detective here, basically are from Donbass and they're low-level scammers, so they're no one important. So I guess someone, it might have been someone high up in the scammer chain, the Odessa Scam Central chain, then they might not have had a white knight right into the rescue. But someone basically slapped him metaphorically about, said, come to your senses, you are being scammed here. You're being scammed massively. So basically, at the end, so far he's managed to get back the apartment, so got removed from the joint venture, so I guess he's got his 60K, paid 200K for the apartment. They say that won't go up in value, he's lost that money. That actually not so true. I think actually it will go up in value in the future, and actually he may even go from 60 to 200K. That's not impossible, but over a long time horizon, 10, 15 years maybe. Let's see. You can come back and tell me in 2035 or something about house prices here. And yeah, he lost 2/3 of his life savings. So sold his house, quit his job, and just basically lost to a bunch of low-level scammers here in Ukraine. Tragic. At times, then he went to the police. There's the other thing for you to be aware of. In Odessa, they laughed at times they laughed in my face, he said. Common problem here in Odessa in particular. I think the police have improved a lot in Ukraine since the Euromaidan revolution. You don't have the same level of issues with been shook down as a foreigner for, money for not having your documents or something trivial like that. That doesn't happen, and they are a lot more helpful. It's not hard to be more helpful than that very low level of the Yanukovych years, which was until 2014. But here in Odessa, getting them to investigate crime and getting convictions is a real problem if it's some sort of criminal who's connected here. Even if they're a low-level criminal, it'll be very hard to do it. And also there's very little sympathy for a guy who gets caught in a romance scam, because normally they're seen as just gullible fools by locals here, and just like they don't even really consider it a crime to take advantage of someone who's that gullible. Unfortunately, not that I agree with that, but police are supposed to do their job, investigate crime. So that's my reaction to this BBC, I guess, investigation or article on the website that I linked down below. Go read the whole thing, especially about the detective. It's probably entertain you a bit. So what can I say in conclusion? Like, this is not a typical wife hunter scam. We had the 3 huge red flags before it just got like unreal, basically, almost unbelievable. You had in the beginning the translator who is introducing her as a friend and then making bucket load of cash out of it. Obviously that's a huge vested interest. It's basically it's almost a red flag to make me seem, if I was being asked about the situation, which I do obviously in consulting calls with clients, I'd say almost certain that it's a scam. I go to 99% at that stage even. And then you have the second red flag about the no intimacy. Then it's obviously a scam 100%. We don't need to look at it anymore at that stage. And then obviously you have the whole thing of transferring money for the apartment to the company of a friend, and all this messy stuff about the wedding. I mean, at that stage it's just farcical. So, but we can say the transferring money to someone that shouldn't have any business with the apartment. And obviously planning to get married to someone that you have no intimacy with already. This is second point number 2. Shouldn't even be discussing buying an apartment, but obviously doing it with someone that is not trustworthy or shouldn't be trustworthy to you makes it, kind of a foregone conclusion. But I want to, as I said, I want to show some compassion, because I have genuine compassion for this guy, because I've seen guys here. I'm not just talking about the wife hunters who come, who are naive, think that, as I like to maybe almost joke at the end of videos, like Jimmy from Nashville or whatever, who's obese, 65, can't get even an ugly chick back home, and has no social skills, bad teeth, and shows up and he thinks there's some 25-year-old supermodel standing on the tarmac here in the Odessa airport waiting for him to come because she loves him. He's not that kind of guy. He actually had a function here in Ukraine. He came over and he was introduced by someone he obviously trusted. And that what makes it quite an unusual scam. It normally happens to the wife hunters more than, the people who actually move here. So obviously I help my clients, never with a dramatic situation like this. It would never go that far. It would never go to the first red flag would have been enough, for me to have called time on this chick. And actually, maybe I should say, before I get into this, I looked at the photos, and I can't see what James is because his face is blurred. But this Irina woman, she's not particularly good looking for Ukraine. I mean, she's slim, you could say easy in the eye, maybe for her age, slightly above average. But he wasn't caught out, by the 20-year-old supermodel being, a 65 obese man. The age gap is not an issue. He obviously had higher socioeconomic status than her. So it was a very plausible, just looking at the photo, without being able to see him, and he doesn't look obese in the photo at least, because it blurs out his face. It looked plausible. Also, you need to look for the behavior. It's not just about some stereotype of, the slob coming over here and, being scammed out of the 20-year-old model. It can also happen to realistic, at least the way people look, their social status, their money, and their looks. It mightn't look out of place if I saw him walking around here, the two of them together, but the behavior was the key. And I help clients in many ways to overcome certain problems. It's hard to know where to start with this one because it's so farcical by the end, but basically you have the whole scam thing, which I really don't want to focus on so much outside of reacting to an article like this, because there are, huge number of genuine, most Ukrainian women are genuine, they're not gold diggers, they're not scammers. It's obviously sensational to see these cases. It's not typical, but it typically happens to a lot of Western guys that come here and don't have an insider. Let's sum it up, like they don't have an insider, someone that showed them the ropes. They got caught out, either their wife hunter had been caught up by a scammy, first of all, PPL site online, scammy romance tour agency here, which even the genuine ones, it's not the best way to go about it for nearly all guys. And then he actually moved here, which is a great idea, but you need to do it with, as I said, an insider, someone who's really going to be looking out for your interests, and that's basically what I do here in all those. And I'll just put a series of links below for the on-demand services like the consulting on your romance life here in Ukraine, obviously how to avoid the scammers, that goes without saying, but also how you can, reach your potential here. Basically find a great, genuine, beautiful Ukrainian woman, because I know that's what you want, and not knowing you personally yet, probably what you deserve. So definitely don't end up like James, just with the wrong woman. Never mind being scammed out 2/3 of your life savings. Also, if you are planning to move here, because it's becoming extremely popular to move to Ukraine, I think it's actually become, I'd say, the majority of queries that I get from my consulting now. Yeah, it's a great idea. I mean, it's here. It's actually maybe a little bit twat. I'm probably not the best at advertising because I'm sweating here. It's probably going to pour rain, and we're probably going to have a torrential thunderstorm in a few minutes after I finish this video. But yeah, Ukraine, cost of living, probably about 1/5, between 1/3 and 1/5 of living in the West. And this is a phenomenal value. And increasingly, the kind of downsides to living in a less developed country are slowly being minimized here in Ukraine, I have to say. I'll make some more content about that going forward. And obviously the dating scene, as long as you avoid Yulia, Christina, and Irina, can be fantastic. So for a single Western guy who wants to go and 5x his lifestyle, then still think Ukraine is the place to be, or in Eastern Europe in general. So I'm gonna let you go. Drop your comments down below, your reaction to this video, I guess your reaction to my reaction to the article, to the BBC investigation. And yeah, good luck with your travels, and hopefully not your travails here in unique Ukraine, because it's going to be an absolutely fantastic summer 2021 after a mess of 2020 and the coronavirus lockdown. If you can get over here, it's going to be unforgettable. Let's call it unforgettable Ukraine. Yes, because that's what the summer 2021 is going to be. So, do побачення, до свидания. See you in the very next video. Ciao, ciao from Odessa Mama. Beautiful, passionate Odessa Mama on the shores of the Black Sea. Unfortunately, if you're not careful, you end up like our friend James in Scam Central.
SAR Experience.